Hello, and thank you for joining me today for our podcast from Speak It Out. Today we're meeting again with Jamie Cartwright. He's back in to talk us through the second part of his journey. A big part of his recent history is his time in SAS Who Dares Wins, and when he disclosed to the sergeants about his experience of sexual abuse at the hands of Barry Bennell. And that's what today's episode is all about. So thank you for joining for a second half of this. I hope you enjoy it as much as you did the first.
At Reality Youth Project, we are passionate about making a difference in the lives of young people, helping them to reach their full potential wherever they are. It is with this in mind that we are delighted to be sponsoring this Speak It Out podcast, as they look to do the same, helping boys and young men to break the stigma and silence of sexual abuse.
Please be advised that this episode does discuss sexual abuse, so please do watch with caution. Thank you. Jamie, hi. Thank you so much for joining us again for another episode. I felt like we didn't really have much time last time to go over everything because it's such a big story. Everything that happened, we've already gone over in episode 1. For the sake of just a little summary, we listened to you talk about your childhood, how you came to meet Barry Bennell, and even to the point of his arrest, and you eventually somewhat disclosing via Twitter with Andy in response to Andy's disclosure. So so if you want to start us off with, I guess, thinking about what is it that led to the point of actually fully disclosing yourself?
You know, as you just said, Twitter, it's reminded me, because I don't think I mentioned it last time. And to answer your question, which is what led to me disclosing, I was getting to a point, so I was like mid-30s, I was getting to a point where I was showing behaviours that were quite reckless to some degree. And I would normally under the influence of alcohol, and I would do something that I was pushing boundaries a little bit. And I think when I look back now, I was almost trying to create a catastrophic event in my life so that everyone would look at me and go, what's going on here? And it would force me to say, this is what's going on. Right. So I was worried about myself, about what I was capable of. And that coincided with and talking about Twitter, is I set up, I don't use Twitter now, well, X now. I don't use it really, and I never really did. But I set up an anonymous account after a few drinks. And that anonymous account, I started to post and say things on that account that I wanted to say as me, right? So it was strange how I was starting to show this. I needed to get this secret out. And one vehicle I used very briefly, but I thought, well, so it just shows you it's kind of like a symptom of me wanting to speak out. And I was using a platform that I don't really use, but I just felt like I wanted to be able to get this thing out of me, but I wasn't ready to say it's me that's saying it. So it's funny how I remember when you said Twitter, it just made me think, crikey, I remember doing that. And that kind of coincided with then reaching out to Andy when he disclosed, and it went, the Guardian grabbed the story, and so then I reached out to Andy through Twitter again. It's got a lot to answer for that when you think about it. And then there was that kind of almost disclosure that I didn't really think I was gonna do, and then everything came off the back of that. And
so what did happen then? So you've disclosed, in a roundabout way. You've reached out to Andy, and Andy's taken it as a disclosure. And you've run with that. And then what happened?
Well, so I remember real time. He called me off the back of that very short Twitter messaging. He called me like literally as I sent him my number, and he called me. I had a 10-minute conversation with him. First conversation I ever had with anybody that understood me. And then he said to me, ring Cheshire Police and join everybody out. And the thing was, and I got off the phone to him and I literally rang Cheshire Police straight away.
Did you?
Straight away. And went, I need to, you know, and then I started that process. The thing for me, more than anything, was watching Andy and the rest of the boys do what they were doing on TV. I felt I was compelled to stand shoulder to shoulder with them to do it as well. So I didn't want to let them down by me staying quiet.
Right.
So I wanted to be part of the team that was doing it together. And I felt a responsibility to, if they can do what they're doing on national TV, I need to support that and be shoulder to shoulder with them and be part of this. That was kind of a real driving factor. What happened is, what came out of all of this, which was in the end life-saving for me, was that the Football Association realised that this was a huge revelation and a scandal, that as the custodians of the game, they needed to do something about supporting these non-recent sexual abuse claims and victims, survivors. And so they worked with Sporting Chance, which is Tony Adams, ex-England Arsenal captain, set up Sporting Chance. He was an alcoholic, and so and it became a charity. So they have a physical place you can go into sort of rehabilitation, and then they also have a network of therapists around the country. So the FA had a partnership with Sporting Chance, and Sporting Chance offered ultimately unlimited therapy for footballers who have been victims of abuse.
Wow, okay.
That's how it worked.
I thought that it was, I literally thought it was the FA who had, you know, ultimately provided that, like, as in, as the FA. So it wasn't. So it was a
Sporting Chance, the charity.
And that's a charity by, who did you say?
Tony Adams, who was at England and Arsenal captain.
Yeah. Right, wow.
Yeah, so that charity's grown over the years, and they had the ability to support the hundreds of boys, men, obviously now, who'd come forwards with therapy. And having tried it with the Professional Football Association previously, when I was in a bad place, ringing them up, going and getting you've got 6 free sessions, and you've got to pay for the rest yourself. And that, the pressure of time, and it didn't work for me at all. This was, don't worry, just go in, take as long as you need. And what I now know, having in my experience, is when you've got decades of living with something, and then you're trying to unravel it and deal with the challenges of it, you can't do that in 6 45-minute sessions. I mean, yeah, it's laughable, isn't it? It is when you think about it.
It is, because, like, it's been, you know, for me personally as well, like, it's been so long, like, it's been years since, you know, for me, that the abuse that I endured ended. You know, coming up to 20 years since it ended for me. And I've had therapy, you know, over time. At first I had therapy, as you were saying on the last episode, that it was quite general. It wasn't specific to your reason for getting therapy. And eventually when I did, that was great. But then, you know, right now I'm still working through things, and so I do think that's you know, it's something that's more of a habit of therapy, I guess, or even trying to figure out what works for you, and how do you cope with, what are your coping mechanisms, you know, for dealing with all of this, because it isn't going to fix it in 45 minutes, you know, times 6. it's
impossible.
It is impossible. So I think that's a real, to me, it sounds like a real life-saving grace of these unlimited sessions.
And you use the word life-saving. My therapist definitely saved my life. And I told her, and I've told her since. And that, I mean that in two ways. One is maybe I would have ultimately ended my life, and that stopped that. But the other thing is the life I was living. If I'd have managed to carry on in that state, it wasn't a life that anyone wants to live. So, but what I mean by saving my life in the second sense is that the therapy taught me how to live a life, not just exist in my tormented reality ultimately. And being given the opportunity for unlimited therapy with a specific therapist that understood my challenges, being able to sit in that room and they all talk about it, you need to feel safe in this room. It's got to be a safe space, and there's got to be trust in there. I mean, innately, we don't trust easily. So it took months before I could truly start to feel safe in that environment, and then
truly start to talk, I guess.
Completely that. It was so deep rooted, and I felt like it was this atomic bomb of information that was inside me that could do so much. The ripple effect of it, should I let it out? For me personally, for everything like that, it was for me to go there. It frightened the living daylights out of me. So it took so long to get anywhere close to being able to feel I could start to think. I used to it's coming back to me. I used to talk to Caroline. I could talk quite matter of fact about some difficult subjects that surround my story, but I could disconnect the emotion to the words that I was saying. Well, of course, that's not the purpose of therapy. The purpose of therapy, from my understanding, is to connect the emotion to what you're saying. So I could sit and I talk from there up, not from here up, is the best way I can describe it. So I was able to so I needed to connect that, but the idea of connecting what was sitting deep in me to the words I was saying was just frightening. And so that just took time to slowly get there. And I went through, crikey, it was brilliant. And, anyone who's been through therapy, I'm sure experiences the same as me. Some days I'd turn up and I couldn't wait to get into that room because I knew I needed to, I just felt I needed to sit and talk to Caroline. And there was other times where I would bounce there, full of joys of spring to some degree, and I don't know what I'm going to talk about today. And then I would sit there, and often in those sessions, they would be the most intense sessions when I didn't think I needed to be there. I'd come out and go, that was like, I did about 18 months of intensive therapy, probably every 10 days. Every week, 10 days, I would go and see Caroline, and we just worked and worked and worked. And it was literally life-changing. And my ability I'm a deep thinker anyway, and I'm never happy with my lot. I've got this thing where I always want to try and better something. So I used to come out of the therapy, and then I would sit back and I would kind of analyze everything. And there was so much that I was working through, and being able to sort of interpret my past differently, take forward, and being present and not allow the past to ruin my present and my future, and all of the stuff that comes out of what we've experienced, and being able to be live in the present and be happy in the present, and then also not be paranoid about the future, or just allow yourself to be free of the past, and also to look forward to life.
Yeah, I think that's what all of us ultimately looking for. I think, and ultimately, do we find it? I think, you're very, you had a great experience with your therapist with Caroline, and as you say, saved your life, changed your life, and that's incredible. And I want everybody to be able to have that same level of support and that same experience with therapy and talking it through and getting it out, because I love that idea what you're saying just then about it's like an atomic bomb that you've got inside of you. And I was just thinking to the TV shows where there'll be a bomb and then they'll evacuate everywhere, and then they'll meticulously and very carefully fold back all of the outer layer of whatever it's surrounded by, and then they'll look really slowly and carefully at all the cables and wiring and figure out how best to dismantle this bomb. And I was just thinking then, we have because ultimately we have this, like you say, it can sometimes feel, or it felt when you was carrying the weight of it all by yourself, that it's this atomic bomb. And then I was just thinking we build all these boundaries around that, so that nobody can come near, nobody can penetrate that boundary that we've put in place. And so then when it does come to the point of talking, when it does come to the point of finally allowing yourself to speak out about it, I love that you were talking about Twitter and that private, way of you getting things out there without attaching your name to it. That hidden, that secret disclosure, I think is. I think that's really important to have said, because I think a lot of us have probably been in a similar situation where we've secretly done something to either warrant an eventual disclosure, or to just have a bit of a breather for us. But back to that idea of the bomb, to me, when you were speaking, the Twitter was kind of like an unfolding back of your layers and your boundaries, and then eventually with Caroline, it took months for you to eventually get to that point. I feel like it's a protective measure for what only you know is inside of you. And I do think that that's something that we subconsciously must do to protect ourselves.
And the way I describe it further is that I imagine having this destructive power, this potentially destructive power that sits within you. It's like you're like the safe. Your body is like the safe.
Yeah.
Right. And if I'm going to give you this, I've got to know it's going to be safe. So the way I describe disclosing is, if I've got to feel like if I'm going to hand you this metaphorical atomic bomb that I've kept safe for my own benefit and others, then I've got to know that you can keep it as safe as I have, or I can't give it to you. Because if I give it to you and you let it off, what could happen? What could happen to me? What could happen to everybody else? That it could, and the irony of the situation is that I need to be able to hand you this, and you need to let it off. You've got to do that. You've got to use it for good. The biggest concern that I have is I don't know what it's going to mean when you set it off. For me, I don't truly understand what the world looks like after I've held this thing so safe for so long that I've been able to control it to some degree. But it's interesting, carrying on kind of the metaphor or the analogies, is that the bomb inside me started, it was going to erupt, and I started to lose control of it. And
with the reckless behaviour.
Exactly that. So I needed to hand it over. And it was either going to destroy me, or I needed to give it to somebody that I could trust, who could then dispose it.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
properly, because that's another thing. We'll move on from this in a second, but but that is another thing, like, isn't it, that the specialists who come in to deal with that, on these shows that I'm thinking of in my head. But I suppose that actually takes us nicely onto a bit of a fast forward from from the point of getting help and things and reaching out. Fast forward to SAS, Who Dares Wins. So tell us about that. Why did you choose to go on the show in the first place? And I guess what made you speak out on that platform?
So,
I mean, you already had your Twitter. You could have used this.
I could have done, 3 tweets in 10 years or something like that. So I basically said to Caroline, or we agreed, that I didn't need the intensive therapy anymore. I got to a point where I felt I got the toolbox I needed. I'd said what I needed to say, and I felt I was set free of kind of my past to some degree. I'd always been a fan of SAS. There's some synergies you see with SAS to my football life. So if you think about what I was, I played football in the 90s, and the coaches were tough, school of hard knocks kind of stuff. And you didn't show pain, you show emotion, and you had to, you were beaten down. And then if you still could perform under that amount of pressure, then you deserved to be a footballer. It was kind of, that's how it was. You'd also got a peer group that were your teammates, but you were fighting. It was last man standing in that environment, because to be a footballer, you did everything it took, and that meant clambering over your teammates to get there. So when you look at what SAS is, SAS has the directing staff who mirrored what my coaches were like. You look at the recruits who you're in a team, but the whole point of the show is to be the last person standing. And then also on top of that is that you have to perform under the highest pressure when you're trying to be a footballer. And the show is exactly the same. The show has the big sort of expensive tasks that they do, where we're on an oil rig and, we're abseiling off an oil rig or whatever they are. And they are where you're under the most scrutiny. And you've got to deliver for yourself, but you've also got to deliver for your team. And you've also got to deliver well enough for the directing staff. So it mimicked my football life very closely, which triggered me like you wouldn't believe, because my football life, as you know, it was tough for me, right? So, and there were times when I didn't deliver under pressure. So when I looked at SAS, I felt like this is before I disclosed. I used to watch the show. I used to think, could I do that? And it used to frighten the living daylights out of me. The idea of me being one of those recruits, I used to kind of project myself into that. And I used to think, what could I do it? So anyway, I finished the therapy, I stepped out of that, and then literally within a day, I applied for the show. Just did the classic, went online. And the reason why I wanted to do it was, once I started to tell my story to people close to me, every time I told somebody, I just wanted to tell everyone. It was almost like I'd figured out that this is what I need to do. I have to tell everybody who I really am as a human being. Every time I told somebody, I wasn't living a lie with them anymore. They saw me for who I was. And then I saw the power of what Andy did, along with all the other lads who waived their anonymity and were brave enough to stand up and say their truth to the world. And I thought, selfishly, by me telling my truth to the world, I'm going to heal. But then separate to that is that other people might also see what I do, and then they might choose to pick the phone up, lean into their friend and disclose. And then that's the start of their healing journey then. So it was, it was multi-layered applying for the show. But when I sent the application in, at no point, and it took 9 months from my application to actually getting the call to say, congratulations, Jamie, you've made the 20 there was 45,000 applications for season 6.
Oh, wow, okay.
They reckon there was something like 3 times the amount of applications than they'd had in any previous show for some reason.
Right.
That's what they told me anyway. And they like, I remember where I was watching a game of football local down the road at 7:30 at night. Phone call comes in. Jamie, congratulations, you made the season 6 of SAS Who Dares Wins. And I was like, I've been waiting so long. And of course they tell you, and you're going to fly in 13 days. So it's not like you've got loads of time to think about it. But I remember getting the phone call and I come off and I was like, fuck, I've actually got to do it now.
What have I done?
I've actually got to do this. And it was COVID times. So we flew, we didn't know where we were flying to. We ended up going to the Scottish Highlands, the Isle of Skye. And then what we had to do is create our own bubble, as you used to have to do in back in those times. And we flew to the Isle of Skye. We had to sit in a hotel room, the most boring hotel rooms, white walls, white ceiling, white bed linen. It was like, it was
mental institute.
It was. I was literally going to say it was like medical, cause like clinical.
Yeah.
And we were like 23 hours a day. We had to stay in our room. We had an hour.
Oh wow.
Literally like being in prison. Well, not that I've been in prison, but 23 hours in your cell.
Yeah.
Out, you could go out for an hour to do some exercise, and we had 10 days of that. 2 people tapped. 2 people, VW'd before they even got on the show.
Wow.
And I understand completely why they did it, because I got today, my anxiety was through the roof, because I'm now on location, anticipating possibly the worst experience I'm ever going to have in life, potentially, that I've signed myself up for. And you're just sitting in your own mind for 23 hours. Sleeping gave you a bit of respite from it. But I ended up having to, what I did is I in that time, I got my phone diary and I put half an hour things to do in my day. So wake up, mobility, yoga, meditation. I was doing everything I could because my anxiety was through the roof. And then what built my anxiety even worse was we had to do they tested us. They did, I can't remember what the test is called. Basically, you've got a mask on, you're on a bike, you've got a pedal. So you're like a lab rat, really. You got things all strapped to you, and you had to pedal on this bike and get yourself to kind of 100% of your max out on this bike. But this mask was restricting your breathing, and I'm starting to pedal on this bike, and just as I started to need to breathe a bit heavier, and I couldn't breathe properly, my anxiety just went through the roof, and I can't tell you how much I was fighting myself for ripping the mask off. And I remember thinking to myself, I was on this bike, I'm going, if you rip this mask off now, it's game over. You've come all this way. Surely they're not going to let you on this show if you rip this mask off, because you got to have hoods on, you got to have all sorts of stuff on the show. And I'm thinking they'll just go. So I was having a panic attack on the bike, having to do this ramp test, as they called it. And I was fighting these I was honestly, how I got through that ramp test, I'll never know. I got through it. I got out the other side of it. Well, now my brain is gone berserk. I'm thinking, if I can't do a simple physical test with a mask on, how am I going to do SAS Who Dares Wins? How am I going to get through it? So then I got about 8 days left then before the show, and I had to compartmentalize everything that was going on, and I had to build a structure in my day, in my cell, and just to get to the start line almost.
Wow.
I actually documented it. I used to go out and when I had my hour exercise, I'd go out into the mountains. It was beautiful. The Isle of Skye was stunning.
It's stunning, yeah.
And we had decent weather, so it was beautiful. And I just kept talking to the camera. I'd be halfway up a hill, and I'd talk to the camera and just let the camera know how I was feeling on that day. I'm so glad I did that, because when I look back on that now, it just shows you how difficult even getting to the show was. And as I say, 2 people didn't even get to the show. They tapped in the 10 days.
Do you think that, do you think the build-up of anxiety would have been anything to do with the idea of being on show? Literally being on the show, but being on show, being visible, being seen.
Yeah.
in the sense of, you know, the Barry Bennell stuff, but did you know that you was going to go on and tell?
1,000,000%.
You did?
I knew that was why I got on the show.
Thank you for making it this far into the episode. I just wanted to take a little bit of a break just to reintroduce Speak It Out in case you're watching this video and you don't have a clue who we are as a charity. But yes, Speak It Out is a charity. We are raising awareness of male sexual abuse. Typically, we do that through workshops in schools, raising awareness amongst boys themselves. We also include training in that for teachers, and we also include guidance sessions for parents and carers. If you would like to support our cause, then please do consider donating. You can find us online at www.speakitout.org. Please do consider it. It will mean the world to me as the founder of Speak It Out, but also it will just really push our cause. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of this episode. Right, so you put it in your application like this happened.
Absolutely. And you have multiple meetings with different people along the journey.
Right.
And then why do you want to go on the show is the question. And I'm like, well, this is why I want to go on the show, you know, and why I wanted to go on the show was to tell my story to the world in probably the most distressing way I possibly could. But I was like,
yeah, there are other ways.
It's ridiculous. I look back now, and I definitely didn't know what I was getting myself into. I really didn't. But it was like, if you're going to do it, you might as well do it. And and so I knew exactly what was going to happen, and I knew why I was on the show. And the DS, according to the producers, they don't know your story.
Yeah, I didn't think that they did.
No, they have to find it out on the show. And so when you have your mirror room interview, as it's called, where they wheel you into a room and then they take the hood, sit you down, take the hood off you, and then you're sitting in front of two of the DSs. And they left me. I didn't go into the mirror room until I think day 5 or day 6. Other people, most other recruits had been in, and some of them had been in twice. And I was thinking, what's wrong with me? Why do they want, you know, it turns out that I had a particularly bad run back from a task where I just hit the wall. I couldn't run any faster than I was running. And up to that point, I'd been in the middle of the pack. I kept myself as the grey man. Kept my, you know, don't be at the back, don't be at the front, just stay. Well, I couldn't be at the front, I wasn't quick enough, but basically stay in there, don't be last, because the heat comes on you. I was flying and I was doing really well, and I got a little nod of appreciation from the chief instructor on one of these tasks. He was like, you're coming into your own now, 14, keep it going. That was the first bit of any positivity or validation that they'd even seen me. And then sure enough, I run back from that task, I hit the wall, I come last in the run, chief instructor's throttling me, you fucking let yourself down, you're up here, you're now fucking down there. And then when you're at your lowest, they call you in.
Right, okay.
So basically they just waited for me to physically break. And I did. And then they called me in. I mean, I was broken in every sense of the word at that point. Because the other thing is, I often get asked the question, how real is it, the show? That often, you know, because at the end of the day, it's a reality TV show. But people say, like, how real is it? Because there's this feeling to some degree where about what you see on the show, and then we're all sitting in a nice, warm, comfy sofa or something, having a brew in a, you know, in a nice, the way I describe it is that for the DS, it's a course. It's not a TV show. You're on a course. And that course is an educational course. They want to teach you whilst you're on the course. It's about 10, 11 days is the course. And when you are sent in, we were sent in at like 4:30 in the morning, pitch black, ambushed on a train, beasted for 45 minutes. And then heads up, looking at the DS, full of mud, lost my trainer, all sorts of stuff. And it's like, right, now you're in. And honestly, I remember thinking to myself, what on earth have you done here? Like, what on earth have you done to yourself here? Why would you do this? And but for them, there's none of this kind of, can you retakes or producers stepping in and saying, sorry, can we do this? It is from the minute you're in, it's live. You're in. And you see obviously the camera people running around filming you, but the only time you see anybody else other than the DS and your recruits is when you have your mic pack changed once or twice a day. They do it in the middle of the night to try and keep it even less sort of intervention from anybody else. But every now and then you just stand against the wall and someone turns up, swaps your mic pack, and off you go. So when you're in, and it feels very, very real, because you're at the mercy of these.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're very hard, like
brutal.
Brutal, yeah. I mean, when I watch it, like there's just been a recent series on, hasn't the celebrity one?
Yeah.
And you watch it and you just think, how could anybody like willingly participate in something like this? Like for me, I oppose that kind of experience so much, like, and I just can't imagine myself ever putting up with it, like that alpha you know, what's the word? I was going to say experience, but these mega like tough guys really putting you through it, being incredibly harsh, being not harsh, but you know the way that they are, and and I just think I couldn't do it. And I think personally though, I wouldn't do it because I know that would be quite triggering for me, I think.
Well,
to be so in such a submissive position.
Yes. So the consultant psychologist during the application process had a major concern for me because of that dynamic.
Yeah.
How was, that based on my experience as a child, what's it going to leave me with, or when I'm on the show? And she said that they would be watching me very, very carefully throughout the show as I became more vulnerable. As you're getting lack of sleep, tired, food, as you become more and more vulnerable, and they get harder and harder on you, the more vulnerable you become, because that's the idea, is that they try and drive you, break you to make you kind of stuff. They were concerned about me in that dynamic completely. And I wasn't concerned so much about myself, and I kept telling them this. I basically said, look, I genuinely think I'll be fine. And the reason why I thought I'd be fine is because I'd been a 16-year-old kid thrown into the deep end of professional football when there wasn't sports science, there wasn't mental well-being, there wasn't support for kids. You were a 16-year-old thrown in with adults, and you got to hold your own. And there, and not only have you got to hold your own, you got to prove yourself. So it kind of, I didn't think they could get me make it any worse than what I'd experienced trying to be a footballer as a young kid. What I didn't really comprehend is that when you turn up at pre-season training as a 16-year-old, you've had plenty of sleep, you've eaten, and you're not cold all the time and wet, right? That's the thing that you can't. It's very difficult to describe the layered effect of what it does, of what the show can do to break you down. I mean, no one likes to be tired. No one likes to be hungry. No one likes to be wet and cold. That was the state we were in from morning one. And it's unrelenting. Then you layer on top of that the fact that they are trying to break you. These people who will go further and harder than you ever will. And you know that. And that is the fear in me of that was, so you layer this. Then you've then got to produce under pressure in very tasking circumstances. Often tapping into most people's phobias, height, water, close spaces, all of that. So when you layer all of that, and it is like death by 1,000 cuts, it really is. And so all of that I didn't factor in to then being bawled at running up a hill.
Yeah.
I'd been bawled at running up a hill before, and I could handle that. But when you layer everything around it, and I remember Melvin, one of the DS on the show, I said, I thought, you can call me whatever you want, and it'll just not bother me. It'll be water off a duck's back. It won't bother me that. And I remember my face in the mud, and I was like crawling through something on day 6 or whatever. And he went, come on, number 14, you're a fucking slug.
Oh.
He called me a slug. Right? Now,
you can call me what you want, but not slug.
It was the first time I went, I'm not a fucking slug. I was like, it's funny how it gets you to this certain point, and I'm just like, you know, so it is. I mean, I've done marathons, I've done an Ironman triathlon, I've done endurance events through, you know, trail running. It is not even close to the experience of being an SAS 2 days wins. It's not even close.
But I suppose as well, you've got that in the back of your mind. You've got this knowledge that everybody else doesn't have, and that's the abuse that you've endured, and the fact that, you know, you are pressing on because you want to get to the point where you do talk, you do have this conversation. So you'd been taken in eventually. Was it? Did you say day 6?
So it was like I think it was day 5 or day 6.
Yeah.
They finally took me in, and then Ant Middleton was the chief instructor on the show I was on, and he was like, talk to me, ask the questions, because he's trying to find out about you.
Yeah.
And told him about being a footballer, and in true Ant style, what, not good enough was his reply. And I was like, yeah, base. And then I then disclosed, and I mean, I was a blubbering mess, but I was absolutely done physically, and then what happened, and this is the turning point for me on the show. And interestingly, that's what the chief instructor says in the mirror room. He says, "This will be your turning point." And he talked about, after he heard my story, he talked about we beat them with success, and he talked about what I don't see somebody who's vulnerable, who is a victim. I see somebody that shows courage and is this, that, and the other. And you know, it was like I walked out of the mirror room, and Foxy was the one that put my hood on and escorted me out. And then as he took my hood off, he went, "You're a top man." He says, "And I thought you were before you said that." I'm getting emotional. And that was, and he patted me on the back and he went, "Right, fuck off," and off the way.
How do you think you're doing on this course?
Okay until today, Staff.
I'd agree with that. You've got a long way to go on this.
Yes, Staff.
But we can tell you're a team player.
I left school and played football for 5 years, Staff.
Who for?
I played for Stoke City.
Lovely place. Born and bred. I'm a Stokey.
Unfortunately, I never broke into the first team.
Why? Just weren't good enough?
You know, you can blame all you want different things that happen along that path, but my mind was too full of other things.
What other things?
When I was 11-ish, I was a pretty good footballer at that age. I was getting a lot of interest, and I ended up playing for a local team, and they had a particularly good coach. Unfortunately, the coach turned out to be a prolific paedophile. And for 2-ish plus years, I was a victim of that. So I vehemently denied it due to the embarrassment. And I did that for 25 years. And it just fucked me up, really. another victim went to the national press. We had the same abuser. And I tweeted him and said, mate, good on you for being brave. And he remembered me. And I had a 10-minute conversation. That's the first time I've spoken to anybody who understands it. And that was it. That allowed me. If he's got the strength to go on national TV, I had to stand next to him and do it with the rest of the boys that came out. So I did. And it,
Good.
Best thing I ever did.
Good on you.
I felt when I said it once, I fight to stand on the top of the mountain and shout about it.
What you've gone through, and to come on there and do what you're doing, everybody's going to be proud of everybody.
Thank you, Steph.
Brave.
It's sort of amazing. I don't see a victim. I see someone that's extremely brave, that's extremely keen. What you've done is courage. Being honest with yourself frees you as an individual, doesn't it? And that's how we defeat them, with success.
Yes, Steph.
This will be your turning point, because you are very, very capable of doing that. God!
I've got to carry the last 25 years with me.
Hey, you're a top man.
Thanks, Steph.
You fought that before, so just keep going.
Thanks,
Crack
Steph.
on.
And there are days that I wake up and it's a challenge. It ingrains itself in everything. I just wish I'd had the strength of character to have raised my hand and been the one that actually got him arrested. Because somebody else had that strength and did it and saved the rest of us.
I couldn't go back to the accommodation for a while. Because I was just I was just crying my eyes out, and I had to have some time on my own for a bit. And I hid in one of the rooms. But then, interestingly, after that, I then sat on my camp bed thing in the accommodation. And DJ, one of the other recruits, who's really good mate of mine now, he just shouted across to me. He was like, Jamie, you look really chilled, man. That's what he said to me. And I sat and I looked at him and I went, yeah, I am, to be fair. He was like, yeah, you look really chilled. And DJ's got that. He's got that. He's in tune. Like, and he just went, you look really chilled. And the interesting thing about that was I'd been fighting, and you have to fight to be on that show. As in, you're in a fight, flight, your adrenaline is rushing through you all of the time. Well, that's my experience anyway, to get through it. After I had that mirror room interview and I finally disclosed, which is the reason I went on that show, I just sat back and went, now, you can't be on SAS Who Dares Wins in that hell that you're in without fight and adrenaline coursing through you. After I said that, it just dissipated. And because it dissipated, I had my most difficult 2 or 3 days then, because my brain was saying, you don't need to be here anymore. Go.
Yeah.
You don't need to be here anymore. And I knew that my brain would use every tactic to get me out of the hellish situation I was in. So I went into the show knowing you're going to have to fight yourself here to stay here. And after day 5 or 6, I stayed until the morning of day 9 after that. Those 3 days I stayed there were the most difficult. And the reason is because I didn't need to be there anymore. And so I got to I had to do a sentry watch, which get up at 2:00 in the morning, put your wet kit back on. And I'm talking, when you're putting your trousers on, it's taking your breath away. They're that cold, right? And then you're broken. You're all just broken. And I remember putting my stuff on going, I can't do this anymore. Because my fight had gone. The reason for me being there was no longer there.
Yeah.
And your adrenaline drops, which apparently means you start to feel all the pain in your body from all of what you've been through. I mean, the physical pain, because I mean, your cuts and nothing heals because your body's in survival mode. So it's just trying to protect your major organs. It doesn't send anything to any cuts or bruises. You're just building up this compounded physical sort of harm that you've been through. And I was just in serious pain, walking across in my boots, walking across the parade square. The soles of my feet were in agony. I hadn't felt that up to that point. So it just all became too difficult. Anyway, I was on the sentry watch with Connor, who was one of the guys that finished the course, the Irish dancer. And I said to him, "Mate, I'm going tomorrow." And he was like trying to talk me out of it. And I said, "Connor, we had a good chat for an hour on the top of this sentry watch thing." And he was like, at the end of it, he was like, "No, I can see why you need to go. I get it." And then the next morning I woke up, we're on the parade square. And this was the only thing I'd say about holding back a little bit and not going. And it's a mini regret of mine, but then there's a reason why I did this. I knew if I went out that morning and got beasted in any way, I was going to give up, voluntary withdraw, under duress. And I didn't want to give them that. I wanted to hold some control. So I did it on my terms when I was in a stronger position, not when they shoved my face in the mud, beasting me. There was something about that was too much for me to allow to happen. So on the parade square in the morning, when the chief instructor was trying to put us into two teams, I just stepped forward and took my armband off. And I went, and he went, "14, get back in fucking line like this." And I just looked at him and I said, "Please respect my decision, staff." And he looked at me, he went, "You ripped my armband off." I went, "Fuck off to the medic's office then." And I walked into the medic's office and I did it on my terms, not under duress. I didn't need to be there anymore. It's time for me to go. And he come into the medic's office afterwards and he was like, "You're definitely not, you're definitely done." And there was me and one of the other recruits, and we were both like, "Yeah, we're done." And he gave us a hug and went, "Right, I've got to go be some recruits," and ran out. So I regret, there's part of me that goes, I didn't leave everything out there on the course, maybe because I held a bit back and did it under my terms. But then there's part of me that I'm proud that I came to the decision of leaving and it was the right thing to do. And then I did it not under duress. I did it. I kept a level of control in that situation which I felt like I needed to do, I think.
Well, that's interesting because I think when I was saying before about like I feel like I wouldn't ever be able to do it because of that environment. To me, it would just be something that I just wouldn't enjoy, I don't think. And so I think when you say you kept that control,
just a bit,
and I think that's really important because I think we, from experiencing what we've experienced, I think control is quite important to us. Or it certainly is, for me. And as you just described there, about keeping that level of control and going out on your own terms and things like that. No, I really admire that. But also, I think as well, when you're saying about, you feel like you didn't leave everything out there by withdrawing. I don't know. I think there's many people who would agree with me when I say I think you left more than
maybe
you would have ever needed to, because it wasn't just the physicality of it all. It was. I do think as well, all that pain you was feeling in your body after the fact, that led you to the point of withdrawing. And I think an element of that must be the release of it. You speaking out there.
Absolutely. You got to remember, I applied. I didn't get on the show for 9 months. Right, so I finally get there, and the reason I was going to go on that show was to disclose publicly So then I finally do it. And then it was just, isn't it funny how DJ just looked across and he went, mate, you look really chilled. And I'd looked at him, I said, I am. I got my beanie hat on. I was in like a semi-recumbent position, leaning against the cold. There was like a brick. The thing was like a cold stone-walled barn thing we were in. And he was like, "Man, you look really chilled." He just saw it in me, like, and there's no reason for him to see it in me. I was only sitting there, and then I went, I think I am, and that was the turning point. That the chief instructor probably meant turning point for a different reason.
Yeah,
he
probably for the
thought
rest
it meant
of the show.
I was going to off. I went.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a turning point in that I've done it. I've done it, and I don't need to be here anymore. And as soon as you don't need to be there, is the most difficult place to be.
Yeah, I mean, I can only imagine, and hopefully will only ever imagine, and don't have to actually put myself through that. But I was going to ask you like how you felt after it, but it seems like you felt chill. But did you feel any sort of like, I don't know, knowing that you had just, you know, for lack of a better word, outed yourself as a survivor? You know, did you feel any sort of fear in terms of the anticipation of how it would be received? That everybody, you know, would have potentially seen that?
So everything you feel before you disclose, and the reasons why you don't disclose, a lot of those you feel now you've disclosed. I knew that I had to wait also. We filmed it in the October. It was supposed to air in the February, and it didn't air till May. So I couldn't tell anyone I was on the show either. So I'd disclosed. I knew that was going to air. There's no way I couldn't turn that back now. I had to wait 7 months for it to actually air. So I had that 7 months of anticipation, constantly going, I did the right thing. Yeah, I did it, but did it? Oh, should I? Oh, you know. And that concern, because you're naturally you're telling your most private secret that you kept, you know, to the world on a blinking TV show. So when it finally aired, and the producers talk you through every episode and where you feature. Right. So I knew it was like episode 3 was where they focused on me, and I knew that was where they were going to do the mirror room interview. So it got closer and closer and closer to the day. I imagine what it was like the Wednesday before. I'm thinking, because now you're on the show, people know you're on the show. You've done 2 episodes. I was part of the fitness industry fraternity, if you like, which is quite a close knit group of people, having worked in it for 20 years, and that, you know, I'm the talk of the fitness industry. That kind of, and it got, you know, all the support. No one knew what was coming. Of course, they didn't know. And then episode 3 drops. What I didn't know was, I was waiting for the Sunday episode, and that was going to be where I told the world. Well, I get a phone call on the Thursday afternoon from the press office or whatever it is, the PR person, that says, Jamie, I've got the Daily Mail, and but I all want to run your story. Are you okay to do an interview? And I went, when they're going to run it? They were like, well, they're going to run it tonight or tomorrow. I said, oh, hang on, no. I said, my understanding is that the show did a disclosing. And they've told me how they're going to do it, and I'm completely comfortable with how they're going to do it. No, we promote the show before the show, and you are the focus on it, therefore. So I went, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah. So I'm in Manchester on a work kind of night outy sort of thing, on the phone to the Daily Mail, telling my story. Because, well, they're going to run it anyway. If you don't, so I'm going, oh, and maybe I'd missed that in the small print. So I'm out with industry colleagues, and that at 11:30 that night, the Daily Mail ran my story on their digital platforms. So people are leaning into me going, Jamie, I'm really sorry. I didn't really, you know, and I'm going, oh, right, the cat is well and truly out the bag now.
I'd have gone, taxi, been going home.
Right. So obviously, the mirror room interview is the most exposing private kind of moment.
It's very intimate, isn't it?
Absolutely. And so what then happened was I'm driving down, I remember it clear as day, driving on the A34 in Stoke-on-Trent, and then my phone's lighting up and I'm going, and someone says, oh, I've seen your video, I've seen your Miriam interview. Like, how have you seen it? Channel 4 clipped the interview and then started putting it across their social channels. So I'm driving down the road and like the most frightening thing that I've ever done isn't going out on Sunday evening. It's going out on Friday afternoon through their social channels, and then someone pings me the link, the Channel 4, and there I am in distress.
Oh God.
So yeah, so I'm going, it started then.
And so did you feel betrayed by that?
I don't remember feeling like that at the time. What I felt, my overwhelming feeling at the time was, brace yourself, it's finally going out. So the fact it went out ahead of when I thought it was, I definitely was uncomfortable and felt like this wasn't how I thought it was going to happen. And I lost the control of that. And I'd controlled it up to that point. I'd said to the production staff, I said to everybody, if you sensationalize this story, if you do anything different than how I want to tell my story, I'm out, I'm done. And up to that point, I felt it was, and I was really pleased. I remember the head producer ring me and tell me how that episode was going to play out with me disclosing. And I was in tears listening to it because the way they did it was exactly, they respected me and how they did it. And I was like, I don't think you could have told my story any better than how you lead up to it, how you do it. And then I'm just all over socials but look, I signed up for a TV show, right? And I understand how this works. It's about ratings. It's about ad spend. I get it, right? So it is what it is. And I went, well, you signed up for this, so this is how it is. What I wasn't ready for was how I'd feel when people watched the episode that I was in, and then the outpouring of support that I got. And what I mean by this is, and it was a strange dynamic because, like most people, I struggle to take positive comments in general. So it's not something I'm comfortable with. So that's uncomfortable. But the acknowledgement of who I am was what I did it for. So now it's kind of like, now you know who I am, which is great. So that was it. But underneath it all, I would accept the positive comment from somebody I've never met before. So it could be on social media or whatever, you're brave, you're this and that and the other. But then immediately afterwards, it was like a byproduct of it. I just felt sadness. And the sadness I felt was, isn't it a shame that you're even having to say, well done for being brave? Like,
yeah,
that's what, what a shame that I'm even in this position. That's kind of how it felt. So actually, what I guess I should have been taking and using as fuel, and the positive comments should be making me feel better, maybe, or making me the justification of the pain and suffering I'd been through and the mental just all of that. And then I kind of got this just incredible sadness that I'm even in this position and that people even are having to say this to me. I don't know. It's actually quite confusing even when I say it. But that's just how it made me feel. And it's not a pity thing or anything. It's not like I was, Jamie, just take the compliment. Stop trying to make it. It wasn't. It's none of that. But I just would sit there and, and every now and then I kind of scroll on the comments to see what comments I was getting on the Channel 4, the video of me disclosing. And it was just nothing but this outpouring of what a brave man and, and this, that and the other. But it was just like, yeah, but what a shame I'm even in this position, right? And so that was a bit I didn't really think about what would happen after I disclosed. The only thing I'd say, and I want to make sure that why did I want to go on the show? Because when I told one person, I wanted to tell 1 million people, right? I wanted to stand on the top of a mountain and shout at the top of my lungs, this is who I truly am. The show, literally, I stood on the top of a mountain, you know, so it did what I wanted it to do. And the other thing, the amount of people that have messaged me privately, the amount of people that I'll do some of my public speaking things, and there's people that will disclose after I've spoken in that room to people, and I know they have, because the people who organise events have kind of messaged me. So we had 2 people to talk, and I'm like, and then I have people come up to me and they shake my hand, and they'll go, Jamie, I get it, mate, and they look at me and I know what they mean. There is so there's been so many people that have therefore disclosed because I disclosed, right? And that I know that every one of them will have released the pressure to some degree and start the healing process. I hope, but you'd hope that that's what happens when you speak out. And I think most people go that, you know, and I just, that, you know, that's the upside of it. And that's why we're here today. That's why I do my work I do with the Football Association. That's why I do my public speaking. And it, you know, and we talk about our specific story, but there are other variations to people seeing somebody tell their story and take inspiration, and they change the way that they act, think, and feel about certain things. And it might not be that they had the same story as we have. It could be different kind of trauma. It could be something else. But just being able to speak out around a difficult subject and show that it's okay to do that, it can resonate with people in different ways.
Absolutely.
Know? And that's so just to, you know, to be short, to make the point, I didn't come out this show with a lasting negative sensation or feeling around it. I didn't. But what I wasn't prepared for was that strange kind of like, oh, that's really kind, but what a shame. But that's really kind, what a shame.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it felt all the time. And I wasn't ready for that bit. I didn't.
I suppose you can't help but, especially when you said at the beginning about being somebody that does think a lot about things, you overthink. I'm absolutely the same. Like the king of overthinking. You know, and so I guess when you do something as big as this, I think the natural thing to do is to reflect on it. And to ponder it and think, you know, what could have gone better, or, you know, how could it have been improved, or whatever. And so then when people are, you know, showering you with support, especially with concerns of what it is you've actually done and what it is you've actually disclosed, you know, naturally you are going to be like, thanks, but you know, how awful that I've had to be in this position in the first place. That was and I think it is an offset that I think we're going to have to live with, I guess, because, you know, we are doing, you know, we're doing great things by speaking out, as you've just described some of the benefits of that, the influence it has on people in such a positive way. That's really great. But, you know, we're not doing this because we had this great idea to speak about something totally, you know, disconnected from us. It's something that has been inflicted upon us, and we're led to this position of, you know, what else can I do but speak? And I guess, you know, I was going to ask as well about how life has changed since the episode aired. I know we've just discussed all about immediately after. But what is it that you've gone on to do since then?
Well, I will mention this first, which is, and I think I said this in the last episode, but basically lots of the therapy focused around self-loathing. I didn't like who I'd become because I felt like I was a walking contradiction. I wasn't being honest with people because of the secret that I held. After the show, that was gone.
Mm.
I was my authentic self, and I didn't have to perform. So how it changed me in that sense is that I'm free. Like and I think we finished the truth sets you free, right? And it did. It set me free in the sense that it'll always be there, but I can now. Everybody who knows me, right? So like that was really liberating, and as fearful as I was of disclosing in the way that I did publicly, actually it did what I wanted it to do. And I didn't need to do it on SAS Who Dares Wins, but I did. And it's helped others, and that's great. How I've moved on then from that, and what's life like now? The past rears its head, and it'll never go away. There's triggers, it sounds ridiculous, but just brown bread roll bap things, whatever you call them, wherever you are in the world. Baps, rolls,
Pancake.
Barns, cake. There you go.
That's the actual word.
That's the actual word. Yeah. That trigger. That every time if I walk down an aisle and I'm looking for bed, that triggers me. But it's different now. Like I look at it, and it's like when it's sort of when you're told, when your mind's racing, let the thoughts come and go. Don't hang on to them. Well, now, when I look at that, it reminds me of a particular place where I was at a particular time in Barry's house, in the kitchen. Bosh. It reminds me of that. Well, now it kind of just comes and goes. It doesn't have the same emotional something. You know what I mean? I see it and I go, oh yeah. And then I think if you take that and I think about how I live my life now, my past doesn't hold me back. I don't expend energy like I used to. Thinking, feeling, acting, pretending, all those things. So I live now freer in the present, not in the past. I don't have paranoia so much as I used to about the future. I welcome the challenges of, but I will say that when the psychologist on SAS before the show said, look, Jamie, this is just a milestone in your life. It isn't going to give you all the answers. It isn't going to close a chapter necessarily. It isn't going to, because a lot of people me included, would say, I want to go on because, I want to finally do this, or I want to, and they were quite right in saying that, no, it's not going to be an end. It's part of something. And it definitely was for me. When I came out the show, it left me with so many questions, not loads of answers. So I came out of the show, I was a totally different person. And the reason why I was a different person was because all of my driving factors throughout my life into adulthood had come from my experience as a child, right? So all of a sudden, I no longer needed to run away from anything. I could be present. I could enjoy the moment. Well, I had to rewire myself. My operating system that I'd used up to that point was no longer necessary. And that was a really strange and difficult place to be.
And how did you do that then?
Well,
because that's a common thing of, rewiring your brain when you've been groomed to behave in a certain way. That rewiring is something that is really important. But how do you feel like you managed to do that?
But because you've got to remember that you're everything. You are a result of your environment to some degree, meaning that you've created that environment because of your operating system. So you are in the middle of your life. Everything's happening around you because of the person that you are. You've manifested it one way or another. You've chosen to take that job. You took that risk when you opened that business. That relationship I have with this person is based on what? And all of that is, all of a sudden, I was taken out of that life, put into a 10-day course, then dropped back into it with a completely different operating system, and everything around me I was questioning, because I'm not the same person that I was that created this. So take my professional life, for example. I've always strived to try and create something, entrepreneurial, whatever you want to call it. But then I'm going, well, why am I doing that? What are you proving? What are you trying to prove? What are your driving factors to be a self-made multimillionaire? What? What? So all of a sudden I'm put back in the vehicle that I left, doing 100 miles an hour, and I don't know how to drive this thing anymore. I don't even know if I'm going in the right direction. Do I want to go in that direction? So it asked me loads of questions, and it took me a good while to find an operating system that worked for me, that sits me back into, to some degree, the seat that I was in, because everything was up for grabs. I actually I found Stoicism, as a philosophy of Stoicism. I had a Stoic coach for a while who was based in based in Canada, because there's not many in the UK. So I had sort of sessions with a Stoic coach, and because religion's not my thing, not that I'm against it, but it's just not my thing. What I like about Stoicism is basically you can control what you can control, and you can't control what you can't control, right? The dichotomy of life. But what I loved about Stoicism for me is that I'm at the center of my world, and I'm the one that it dictates how I act, think, and feel. And that's I can hold that. Nobody else or anything is designing my life for me. And so I like that fundamental idea that I'm in control of my destiny, and I'm also in control of how I handle life. And that's I've got, so everything was kind of built around, and I'm not a massive well, interestingly, I am a Stoic by default, but I didn't know that. And it was when I came across the philosophy of Stoicism, I realized that there's lots about that. And then weirdly, the word Stoic, and there's a lot of Stoicism ingrained in the military, which I didn't realize. Again, I recognize it afterwards. So there's all of this stuff, and it just seemed to fit with me. So there was lots of things that I took from that gave me an operating system to be able to live this new Jamie that had come out, that lost my operating system, which was a negative operating system. It was a survival operating system.
But it was the one that you was used to, though.
Yeah. It was. So it took me, honestly, the Jamie that lives and walks the planet now is so different to the one pre-SAS.
Wow.
On so many ways. And I'm still figuring it out. It's 4 years ago, but I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, but that is a turning point, as you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, and that doesn't mean you turn and everything's great and everything's fine and whatnot. It's a turning point in such a greater sense of the term of, this is where things start.
Yes.
Or this is where things get better.
Yeah.
Or this is where you start to unravel who you are, or who you choose to be.
Yeah.
I think that's like a big thing. I wrote a song once called "Who I Choose to Be." It was didn't really think too much about the title, and that was a line from the song. But but it was all about like coming out the other end of this after I told my parents. I wrote this song, and it was saying like, it's no secret anymore. This wall that you built up for me is now crashing down on you. And it talks about how you've taken so much from me. You've taken the best of me, you might say.
Yeah.
But you're not gonna take any more.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time to realise that actually I am whoever I choose to be. I'm not who that person made me feel I was, or made me convinced I was.
Yes.
I'm so much more than anything that they told me I was.
Yeah.
And I think when you get to that point where you do literally break down that wall, that was made to keep you in secret and keep you silent and keep you scared.
Yeah.
Things do change, and you start to discover who's behind that wall and who you really are. And so you yourself, like 4 years isn't that long, but yet so much changed in like an instant of you speaking about it on SAS. Since speaking, things changed immediately in the sense of experiencing that level of freedom. And then off the back of that, as you say, you've gone on to experience life differently and try to find your way to fit into the life that you have, but with this new sense of self, I guess.
I think the important thing is I needed an operating system that meant I could survive the roller coaster of life. And I'd survived it in the past by forging on in a rush, never standing still, trying to run away from my past and present this person to the world of success, and this, all of those things was what was enabling me to survive. Well, I didn't need to do that anymore. But then, what do I do then? Because life is going to throw me bad things, and Jamie of the past isn't the same. How do I deal with it? In the same token as running away from the past meant I wasn't dealing with it, and that's where I was going. Well, now I've dealt with it, but it doesn't mean to say I don't ponder the past. It's still there, and again, sort of using a stoic approach of sort of, I can't change the past, but I can change my interpretation of the past, and that was something that was really. It really resonated with me, because I can choose how I interpret the past. I can't change it.
Yeah.
So it was just thinking that, like, just starting that conversation with myself about my interpretation of the past. And I used to think that I was very mentally weak as a professional footballer. So I would put myself in pressurized situations. No, that football would put me in pressurized situations, and often when the pressure was really on, I wouldn't deliver properly. So I came away from that as a 21-year-old going, I can't handle pressure.
Right.
When I then look back through my football career and tried to reinterpret it, and this was with the help with Caroline as well.
Yeah.
I realized that given the set of circumstances that I was dealing with, being a 17-year-old and even performing at that level, at an elite level in sport, having carried what I'd carried from the age of 11, 12 with me, having panic attacks at 12 and all the mentals, if I would have been free of all of that, would I have been able to handle that situation better? Probably, most likely. The fact that I kept turning up and doing it when everything within me wanted me to go and hide from life means that actually I was exceptionally strong. But I told myself for 25 years I wasn't. So it was being able to reinterpret my past allowed me to be more freer in the present, and then I can be more optimistic about the future because of that. And one of the other things that came out of trying to find a way of living for the future, living for the day, but embracing the future, was I needed to understand how life is going to throw stuff at me, and I'm paranoid about what it's going to throw at me, because it's thrown some bad shit at me over years. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
And there's a stoic approach to that, which is basically love your fate, not just embrace your fate, like love your fate. Whatever comes your way, love that it's coming your way, no matter how difficult it is,
and make peace with that.
Yeah. And that concept makes you to some degree, if you truly believe it, and it took me a long time to understand whether I could truly love my fate, whatever it is. Do you know what I mean? And I'm still not sure whether I've got all the way to love my fate, but if you can see it that way, then it kind of makes you bulletproof to some degree.
Yeah.
Do you know?
I mean, it's extremely difficult.
Yeah.
I think, but I think you mentioned, before, just then, about that resilience of getting up and doing what you wanted to do, regardless of what you was carrying with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's so key to our way of dealing with our suffering, generally speaking. There is that idea of making peace with your fate, making peace, I guess, with the suffering that we endure in life and the evil that we experience. But I think the fact that you are pressing on, the fact that you're getting up and going, that resilience, I think, is what helps us, deal with what we've got in front of us in life, but also taking it, but then knowing when we need to let it go. Like, you can make peace with your fate, you can accept your fate, but then what you do with that, I guess, is different, isn't it? How you manage it, I guess.
Yeah, and I think I think something that I'll mention that I think is really important, and this is why this is so important, what you're doing and us having this conversation. What came out of something else that came out of SAS for me was the DS, the Special Forces operators. I don't know. I mean, you might be able to name another profession that is much more alpha than a Special Forces operator, right? I mean, they're the strongest, the fastest, the quickest, the most resilient. What they do for a living, I don't know if it gets more alpha than that.
No.
One of the things that came out of the show more than, and I was shocked by it, is there is a vulnerable side to these guys. They will show vulnerability to each other. And when you think about these unbelievably strong and resilient human beings that do a job that many, many people can't, they are in the small minority of military operators that get the opportunity to be in the Special Forces because they pass selection, right? The rest of them fail. Most of them fail. So these guys they have the ability to look at their mate and show vulnerability. And I thought, I came away from that thinking, wow, that's inspirational. They understand the power of sharing a problem. They understand the power of being in a team. Yes, you can show resilience. Yes, you can be the hardest, strongest, fastest, all of that. But they all say, we would have never got through it if I didn't have the ability to show, to be able to be in a team. And they showed us a vulnerable side to them. And I was like, I didn't think I'd see that in these guys.
I mean, but isn't that like fascinating in a way that it is that, that camaraderie and that team spirit that I think has been running through your whole story, I think. From the obvious start of all of this, the abuse, how it happened and everything, it was, very much a collective in that regard. And no, you didn't speak because you were children, you were kids, so of course you didn't speak about it at that point together. But then when people started talking about it, and they went to the press, they went to the police, and then the case and all of that, you were saying before you felt like, you didn't say an obligation, but you felt a sense of, I need to stand shoulder to shoulder with these guys who've been through the same thing as me. That team spirit, and then when you're talking about SAS and the alphas who are there, leading it all, and you saying how they can be vulnerable together, I think there's a real like there's real beauty in that you can trust a group of people so much that you can rely on them with your vulnerabilities, and it's not shameful at all.
Correct.
But I think there's so much of in when it comes to masculinity.
Yes.
There's so much of I can do it on my own. I don't need your help, and I'm independent. Blah blah blah. And you're right. You can do things by yourself. You're more than capable, I'm sure, of doing whatever you want by yourself. But it's not about that, I don't think. Life isn't about standing by yourself. It's about standing shoulder to shoulder. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that, us having this discussion, we are standing shoulder to shoulder, with each other, but also with every other male survivor out there who's been through this horror of sexual violence. And we are in it together, and we can't do it alone. There's no point in one of us standing up and talking about this and none of us joining in. And I mean, I was just speaking recently with somebody, and they were interested in joining for a conversation, which is great. But I was talking, and they were saying, like, you're not going to get the men, you're not going to get people willing to come forward and talk. But I think that's I'd like to think it's quite an old-fashioned view of manhood.
It's changing.
Yeah. And it is changing, and I'm so grateful that every time, you turn around, there's something new from, whether it's a podcast, whether it's, something that you just come across on YouTube, or whether it's just a vulnerable post on LinkedIn or Instagram from a guy. It's just so important, and we each are playing a role in a team effort.
Yeah. Yes.
It's just so important. And I think if we just end then, thank you so much for this conversation that has extended over a good few hours now. Yeah. I'm so grateful of your time, your your ability to talk so openly about everything. And it's clear that this freedom that you've experienced has taking you forward into the rest of your life. The fact that you sat here talking to me so openly, it takes freedom to be that that trigger, if you like, to use that for a different purpose. That freedom is the trigger for us talking, and so I'm just so glad that you've experienced that freedom and able to go on to have this chat with me, but also bring it to SAS and to the world there. It's absolutely amazing. So it's been an honour talking, and I suppose just to end then, why is speaking out so important in terms of the future then, do you reckon?
I think we touched on it a minute ago around this. We need to show resilience as a human being. We have to have resilience. So therefore we must be able to deal with the struggles of life. And we can't constantly always be looking for others to deal with our issues, right? So there is definitely, we must show resilience. We have to build our own resilience up. But what the balance between having resilience within yourself to be able to deal with life, and also to be able to show a level of vulnerability and be able to ask for help and to share those as well. That's essential. And I think that certainly my generation and my father's generation have been brought up to not show vulnerability because it's seen as a weakness. And we have to change that narrative, because by not showing vulnerability, it is a weakness. And it is that we need to keep banging that drum. And being vulnerable and sharing your challenges does make them feel easier immediately. You feel lighter, and you haven't got all the answers within yourself. It's very difficult to look at yourself objectively. And sharing that with people will emotionally make you feel lighter, but it will also start the process of fixing anything if you can fix it. And I think that speaking out and having this conversation is an absolute, every opportunity I get to have conversations like this, I will have them. So it's an honor to be invited on here, because by us having this conversation, if anybody is sitting there thinking about speaking out, I hope that this will give them some confidence that it is the right thing to do. Just find the right way for you to do it. Because once you start that, that's the start of the process of your healing. You've just got to take that step.